All right. Well, thank you for your patience. It appears that our technology is back in shape, and thank you for your patience, those of you that joined us online, and for keeping us informed. Basically, I call the meeting to order so you know what's occurred, and then we basically went around the table introducing those that were here in person. And at that point, I believe we suspended the discussions based on the technology issue. So I was turning to the cameras for those of you on Zoom. If you would like to recognize yourselves, I don't know that I can see you to call you out by name, but if I see it, well, I know we have a speaker on Zoom who will join us, but if any of the members of the committee, I see Director Gary, would you like, or now Secretary Gary, would you like to recognize, introduce yourself to those? So we have a number of folks that are new to a meeting. So.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon to AJ Gary, Director of Department of Public Safety. Secretary of Department of Public Safety, Director of Arkansas Division of Emergency Management. Glad to be here with you.
Thank you, Secretary Gary. Any others joining us by Zoom?
Good afternoon, Wes Ward from the Arkansas Department of Agriculture. Great to join everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Appreciate your feedback during the technology gap.
Yeah, and it's just Glenn Grimshaw here, but I'll be talking to you all later. So thank you.
Thank you, Glenn, for your patience. Hopefully you can see us. Can you all hear now clearly?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we'll move on. I had begun to discuss the fact that as we formalized our meetings a little bit, we've developed some meeting minutes. Our staff worked on our July meeting minutes. Those have been shared, and I believe, as I mentioned, I believe Department of Ag had some recommended changes. Those have been incorporated. I don't know if the rest of you have had a chance to look at it, but I would like to seek concurrence from the committee for approval of these minutes, unless there's any objection.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Second. All right. Well, if we can vote, all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Appreciate that action. We will make those available to the public, and as we continue to strive to get our reports. We have weekly reports. I know the staff is putting together, and those reports also will be made available. Our agenda is brief today, which I guess is a good thing since we tied up a little bit of time on technology. But and I'm going to announce that I will probably step out of the meeting following the NGA discussion. Tricia Treese will wrap it up with an agenda item from the Department of Energy and Environment. But Shane Curry has agreed to moderate the meeting for the remaining portion of it. I'm attending some meetings out of state with our partners from Oklahoma and Louisiana on the hydrogen halo proposal that we're actively working on, and is working on setting up some discussions out of state. So I will be departing here briefly for the airport, but I wanted to make sure that we had this meeting carry forward as scheduled to be able to advance. I know there's priorities and a number of grant opportunities that are now coming out. We said earlier, we know that it's somewhat frustrating that it seems like we're still drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of information coming out, and thanks to Deloitte and others for getting more granularity on that, but we are also waiting on a lot of rules and NOFO specifics so that we can be responsive. And it's all like good government. We wait and wait, and then we have to respond in 30 days or something like that. So we need to be prepared. So that's the benefit of that. But the first agenda item we had scheduled today was actually based on a meeting I attended in Florida about a month ago. I had the opportunity to speak to the American consulting engineering companies at a regional meeting, and I had the opportunity to also join partners from Louisiana, Mississippi to discuss IAA, and one of the speakers there was from the Louisiana Broadband Office, and informed me that we had fortunately at Arkansas, been able to rob him of his key talent. So, and then in fact, Glenn Howie, who just introduced himself, was literally moving to Little Rock that evening. I'm happy to introduce Department of Commerce. I believe, Judge, you're going to make the rest of the introductions, but I wanted to thank you and welcome Glenn to the meeting. Look forward to your comments on broadband.
All right, well, let's give him a proper introduction. Glenn Howie comes to the Commerce Department from Louisiana's Office of Broadband Development and Connectivity. As Senior Policy Analyst for the Louisiana Office of Broadband Development and Connectivity, Mr. Howie worked under Executive Director Vineeth Iyengar to form and implement Louisiana's broadband policy in regard to access, affordability, digital literacy, and inclusion, as well as the development of regulatory rules regarding Louisiana's first $177 million broadband infrastructure grant program. As a result, Louisiana was one of the first 4 states in the country to have its fund plans approved by the U.S. Treasury. The state also ranked first in the country in enrollment in federal affordability connectivity program relative to eligible households, and was recognized for its groundbreaking stakeholder engagement efforts by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. So now all that experience will be coming here to Arkansas through Mr. Howie. So as broadband director for Arkansas, Howie will advise the governor and the Secretary of Commerce on key issues related to the deployment of broadband throughout Arkansas. He will lead the agency's efforts for broadband and oversee a 3-year plan to provide broadband access to over 110,000 underserved households throughout all areas of the state. He has roots here in Arkansas. He has a grandfather that was born and raised in Ashley County, Arkansas. He also had a great-great-grandfather and great-grandfather here as well. So it's like he's returning home. So we welcome you here, and we're looking forward to hearing your updates as it regards to the BEAD program.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Secretary. Both Secretary Preston and Chief of Staff Hudson send their regards. They could not be here today, another conflict. But so far it's day 12 for me in the office. Week number 4 that I've been in Little Rock. It has been an amazing reception so far. I'm so proud to be here. I am all in, except for the one Saturday where LSU and Arkansas play. I am all in on Arkansas. So I just know that, and as Judge said, in a way, I've sort of come back home. So with that, I'll give a brief update on the efforts that we're making as far as BEAD and the digital equity portions of the infrastructure bill. As far as the BEAD IPF application, the state's broadband equity access and deployment program initial planning funds application was submitted to the NTIA on Friday, August 12th, this past Friday, ahead of the federal deadline. And once approved, this application will unlock $5 million in initial planning funds for broadband office administration and to facilitate the creation of the 5-year action plan that is required to receive the balance of our BEAD funds. We anticipate the approval and funding of the initial planning funds application this fall, with the first material BEAD allocation arriving as early as mid next year. On the digital equity front, on July 11th, last month, the state applied to NTIA for a digital equity planning grant. The state's allocation under this formula-based grant is a little less than $850,000. Funds are anticipated to be announced and awarded by the end of this September. Now, approximately $800,000 of that will be directed towards the Heartland Forward organization to coordinate statewide efforts, document digital equity needs, and produce a comprehensive digital equity plan that the state of Arkansas will then execute. On office staffing through our BEAD funding, the ASBO anticipates hiring up to 4 additional positions to fully staff the office in preparation for the required workload. These positions include a project manager, research and data manager, and 2 positions dedicated to digital equity and community stakeholder engagement efforts. I do want to say, I guess before, if we open it up before, both here and online, that it is our office's mission to be a leader in the South and a top 10 state in the country, and everything that we do broadband related. The broadband issue is an all-of-state issue that requires an all-of-state effort to produce all-of-state solutions. And so with this once-in-a-century opportunity that we have to deliver transformational change to the Arkansas economy, this office moving forward will have that vision and lead the state in the right direction. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you. I'll turn to committee members. If any of the committee members have any questions, I know a number of as we pursue programs across other departments, a number of those link into broadband access as being critical, or fiber being available to help data collection or other things. So it'll be important as we work to make sure that we're coordinating well with your office. I know our EV infrastructure, for instance, plan that DOT has put together, a lot of that data, we understand there's quite a significant effort on data collection under the rules that are being anticipated by Federal Highway Administration, and being able to access that data, getting that data into a system in a rural state like Arkansas can be challenging at times. So especially with limited tower service and things, and lines. So we want to make sure that we're using that. So I appreciate the effort that you bring in the leadership, apparently, that's been demonstrated by Louisiana first, but we'll quickly take over that success, hopefully, in Arkansas. And I'll make sure I'll remind your energy office director that when I see him this evening, that we intend to be there. So we are looking forward to that. So anybody have a question here? And we can open it up. We normally open it up to the audience, but I'll look online. Is there anyone with our Zoom participation? Those that are participating by Zoom are actually committee members or invited speakers. Of course, the public is listening remotely through Arcan or through our PBS stations. I guess I'll open it up to the audience. If you have a question, you can come forward to the mic. Does anyone have a comment or question? We're going to be easy. We'll be easy on Glenn this meeting, but I'm sure he wants to make himself available to meet all of you, to talk to you about what your priorities are going forward. Perhaps not, can't get to all today, but as we go forward, please keep us informed on how we can help you succeed. So thank you. And thank you for coming on such short notice in your first few weeks on the job, so that this committee appreciates that prioritization. All right. Well, with that, that was easy enough. No. I'm going to now look to our cameras. Those of you, I believe you can see behind me too. Hopefully, Glenn Grimshaw introduced himself a moment ago. Glenn works with the National Governors Association staff. He and Shane and we've become close friends as we've met on several occasions with other states and infrastructure representatives from governor's offices across the country. But Glenn and his counterparts have had the monumental task of trying to pull us together and try to represent the governors and make sure that IAJA can be implemented in a meaningful way and that we share lessons learned. So Glenn, I'm going to turn it to you. I don't have a full formal introduction, but if you want to introduce a little bit about your background. You noticed he also has an A-state accent. It's not Arkansas, but we'll take that accent. And we'll welcome Glenn to discuss some of the resources that are that many of you here at the table can avail yourself of to track what's going on at the federal level. So thank you, Glenn, for being available.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the introduction, Secretary Kira. Very excited to be here and have the opportunity to sort of show how we're supporting governors and their staff with implementing the IAJA. So I'm just going to share my screen. Just got a quick little slide presentation just to outline some of the work that we're doing here at the NGA. So my name is Glenn Grimshaw. So I'm a senior policy analyst here at the NGA in the Center for Best Practices in the Infrastructure team. So my background is actually, as you could probably tell, I'm from Australia, so a lot further south than you guys. But I've been in the US pretty much since 2013 with a little break back in Australia since then, but did a lot of work in state government back in New South Wales in Australia, and have worked here at the Port Authority of New York and the New York City Mayor's Office, and also the Embassy of Australia in Washington, working on climate, infrastructure and energy. So that was a great opportunity, and just started the NGA in November 21, so just last year. So it's been a busy time. So I just thought I'd run through a quick sort of summary of the NGA for those who are not aware of what we do. So the NGA was established in 1908, and at its core, it's a member organisation for governors. So it's there to support governors and their staff. So we serve as a forum for governors and their staff to convene and collaborate, share best practices, and identify priority issues. So we have in our Centre for Best Practices, for example, we have around 12 different program areas. So in addition to the infrastructure team where I sit, there's also an energy team, environment team, workforce, K-12 education, post-secondary education, cybersecurity, and a newly formed rural and agricultural team as well. So we sort of cover the whole gamut of issues that that governors and their cabinets are working on. And another role of the NGA is also to act as the bipartisan voice for governors on Capitol Hill and with the administration. So just drilling down a little bit to the NGA infrastructure program. So this was established around 2020. With the appointment of my project director, Tom Curtin, to the role. And so it was established following the work of Maryland Governor Hogan's term as chair of the NGA, where his chair's initiative was focused on infrastructure. Basically, it was established, and there was a lot of advocacy work as well over that period for advocating for the passage of what became the IIJA. So I started, as I said before, in November 2021, so literally 2 weeks after the president signed the IIJA, or Infrastructure Implementation and Jobs Act, into law. So it's been kind of busy from the get-go. So we've been having a great time though, and so basically what we do in our infrastructure team, as Secretary Keogh mentioned, we've brought together infrastructure coordinators. So just after the passage of the law, the president appointed Mayor Mitch Landrieu as federal infrastructure coordinator, and he subsequently wrote to governors requesting that they appoint coordinators for their states. So as governors began to make these appointments, NGA reached out to provide resources to the newly appointed staff members and to build out what has become a very strong network of leaders and governors, administrations implementing the IIJA. And Secretary Keogh has been a leader in that group, and it's been so great working with you and Shane and Tricia and the team. So we really appreciate all your support. So currently we have around 45 active infrastructure coordinators, advisors in our network, which is been fantastic. So a lot of engagement. So in that role, we host monthly calls so folks can share their best practices and resources. We work closely with the White House infrastructure team through our Office of Government Relations to make connections with the infrastructure coordinators and to also make connections to other federal coordinators as well. So each agency has a person appointed to help implement the Act, or the agencies that have relevance to the Act. So and other things we do is host monthly briefings with the White House and Department of Transportation, also run by our Office of Government Relations. And another big part of our work is sort of bringing resources to bear, so to help policy advisors navigate the highly complex Act. So just on that point, just here's a few sort of facts. I'm sure many of you are aware of this, but for those who are not, so the IIJA is very complex. It provides approximately 1.2 trillion in spending, including 550 billion of new funding. There are around 400 separate programs, of which 125 are completely new. And those programs can range from, a $1 million program to, $15 billion program. So there's a real range there. Over 90% of funding is being delivered by non-federal partners, so primarily states, territories, and tribes. And local governments now have a bigger role through this act as well, and are eligible to apply for a broader set of programs. So not surprisingly, given this complexity, we've had many requests over the last sort of 7-8 months from infrastructure coordinators and other advisors trying to understand the IIJA and try and make sense, as Secretary Keogh mentioned, about drinking out of the fire hydrant. So we've been sort of trying to bring together resources to help assist with that. So one big part of that is our IIJA resources page. So this resources page which I'll give a demonstration of to you so you can see what's available. But basically it's a big team effort across the NGA and with state and territory advisors input as well to capture the latest information and insights. So we provide information including latest federal opportunities and updates, latest NGA resources, information from state associations, and infrastructure insights from NGA partners as well. And this can be found at nga.org/IIJA-implementation-resources, or by Googling IIJA implementation. We're actually the first search result there, which is great news. So, or you can just go through the nga.org website as well. So I will just switch my screen over to our actual resources page here. So hopefully you can all see that, but I can walk through it anyway and sort of discuss sort of what are the key elements of our resources and here to help, governors, advisors. So I think probably what we hear is the most useful resource here is the on the right-hand side, we have a calendar of upcoming IIJ funding opportunities and milestones. So this lists here all the available information, all the key programs that have due dates coming up, or for notices of funding opportunities, requests for proposals if there needs to be an action plan submitted or a notice of intent. So we've just updated this today. Many thanks to our comms team. So for example, here on August 16, that is today. So there's a letter of intent due for NOAA's Sea Grant Marine Debris Program. And just go through the list here, and I'll just pick one out just to show you how this works.
Hi, Glenn. I don't know if you can hear us or not, but we cannot see what you're talking about on your screen. I don't know if it's a problem on our end or if it's a problem on your sharing of the screen, but
okay. Yeah, no worries. I can talk through it and just describe it anyway, so that's no problem. So apologies for that. So basically, so we essentially have a calendar on the right-hand side of the web page that has all the upcoming opportunities and dates that we're aware of. So if you ever see anything that's not there, please let us know and we'll make sure it's added as soon as possible. And you can click on the links there and it will then go through to the actual opportunity. So you can see the details there of what's needed and required. We also provide other federal resources that are more static in nature. So, excuse me, sorry. So for example, we have guidelines for, we've got federal resources here for Department of Transportation, where we have guidelines for the new Protect Formula program, which was just announced last week, I believe. And, which is to help make transportation infrastructure more resilient for future weather events. And so we've got the guidelines there for that formula program. So there's nothing due, but it just provides the guidelines for what's necessary to spend money within the guardrails of that program. And we have that for not only transportation, but for Department of Commerce, NTIA, so all the broadband programs, Department of Energy, EPA, Federal Permitting Improvement Steering Council, and Department of Industry and Department of Interior, sorry, and a whole gamut of other programs there. Oh, there you go. I'm not sure if you can see it now.
What's that?
I'm sharing the screen, so if you just direct.
Okay, Glenn, we have someone else sharing her screen on a computer, so you don't have control, but you kind of walk through.
Oh, great. Thank you. No, that's really helpful. Thank you so much. So just here you can see the calendar just to the right. So you can click on the different links of upcoming opportunities. So, so here we've sort of focused on the closing dates or, you know, due dates for information or for submission. So just so you can sort of get a sense of what's coming up. And as you can see, there's a lot. I think we've got over 35 programs listed here. So there's a lot coming up in the future. And I've just gone through all the programs again, which I'll talk about in a second, but there's a lot of programs that still need to have NOFOs released in the next in the fall and the start of winter. So it's going to be a busy few months, I think. So yeah, so, and then if you just go down a little bit further, I can show you the NGA resources tab. So here we've just got some information from our government relations team, some best practice papers we've written. So if you don't mind clicking on the third one down. So that's the, this is a paper that my program director, Tom, sort of led and I helped out with, that looked at infrastructure planning, delivery and success of major projects. So this is quite a great paper. It's a great paper that has a lot of best practices and covers a lot of ground from procurement through to project evaluation, through to communicating the benefits of these projects as well. So it's worth checking out. We've got a lot of other resources as well. If you sort of scroll down, there's another one, State Resources Center, just there. Just up a little bit, sorry. State Resource Center on Innovative Infrastructure Financing. So just that one there. So if you click on the Read More tab button, and that will take you through to a sort of a little paper we've written here on the resources page, more to the point of innovative financing mechanisms available through the you know, through the private sector or through other sort of approaches. So we've got public-private partnerships, we've got asset recycling, we've got tax incremental financing, value capture, and a whole list of resources that can be used in that space if you're looking for some of those projects to be potentially using these tools. Great. So, and if we just go back again, thank you so much for this. This is great. It's going to, we just scroll down again. So here, we won't go into any of the tabs here, but we've got resources from many of our associations, so that support state cabinet members. So, for example, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. So we've got some links there due to some key things they've asked us to put on here to share with our governors and their staff. And yeah, so we've got National Association of State Energy Officials as well. And there's some additional resources there. And if we scroll down a little bit further still, so we've got our infrastructure insights. This is quite a new sort of section of the website. And this provides some information from our NGA partners. So for example, we've just uploaded a summary of a document that Intel has prepared, which is really fascinating, something I hadn't thought as much about, but it talks about not only physical infrastructure, but digital infrastructure rollout as well. So it's sort of a fascinating document. It goes into some of the you know, using sensors to control traffic, congestion, and public transportation and things like that. So it's a really interesting piece there. We've got some other information here from IFM Vespers and Esri, who do a lot of the GIS mapping, which many states and territories have access to. And finally, we just scroll down. And this is actually hot off the presses. So many thanks to our comms team. So Brad, who's worked very hard to get this up and running. So the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've been working on an audit of our tracker. So this actually includes the majority of the programs in the Infrastructure Act. I've still got a few more to add, but it provides sort of relevant information for each separate program. So if we scroll down just a little bit further, yeah, that's fine. Perfect. Thank you. Let me just, yes, let me just pick one. So for example, with this building resilient infrastructure and communities program here, so you can see on the left, it says what the agency is that's administering that program. So that's the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA. And it's under, so thanks very much to Tricia. We've got the great idea of adding the infrastructure asset class or category here. So we've added that recently, just today. So this is a resilience program. The third column here is the name of the program. And if you click on that, it will take you through to the landing page for that program as well. I'm not sure if you can do that, but yeah, but that sort of just provides a link through to the departmental website. And the next column is the amount of money allocated to that program. And this is over 5 years, and that's in billions of dollars. So that's doesn't look like a lot there, 1.00, but it's actually $1 billion. The next column is whether the program is existing or new, whether it's competitive. If it's the next column over is whether the program is competitive or a formula grant or a loan. Some of these not quite sure about yet, so you'll see a few blanks, but we'll fill that out over time as we learn more about some of the new programs. And then the next column along is sort of the information we have up the top in the calendar. So for this program, the latest information is that notice of funding opportunity is expected in summer 2022. So that's hot off the presses from our energy and critical infrastructure resilience summit that was held a few weeks ago. So we had someone there from FEMA who sort of spoke about the imminent release of this round of funding for this program. And just the next 3 columns, you can't see the title there, but the first column is whether tribes are eligible. The second one is whether it's eligible, workforce programs are eligible for funding through the program. And then the third column there is whether cybersecurity is an eligible use, which is critical across many of the programs. And then the tab there that's been turned on there, so you can see a short description of the program, the eligible recipients, and the federal cost share, which I've recently been asked to provide by a number of the coordinators. So we're hoping that's a nice sort of space, and that will be kept up in real time. So unlike, you know, the White House Guidebook is a fantastic resource, and a lot of this is being based on that. But this will provide sort of the latest update. So every time we update the calendar, we'll also update this here. So you can see the exact date of when a NOFO is due and things like that. And if we just head back up to the top of that table, you'll be able to see that, just dropped off. But anyway, at the top of the table, you can see you can search for programs as well, or search for any sort of keyword or agency or anything like that, or category. And the table is searchable, so you can sort of search by you know, the programs that tribes are eligible to apply to. And you can actually export the whole table down into a CVS or Excel spreadsheet as well. So this is something that's been a long time coming, and we've sort of had various versions of this up online, but we're very, very proud and very happy to have this here to help provide additional information and resources to to the state, to governors, infrastructure coordinators and advisors. So, but any input or any thoughts on this, very, very much appreciate. It's very much a work in progress continually. So, but I'll just leave it at that. And that's kind of a bit of an overview of the the resources we have. So another thing I forgot to mention is that the NGA has hosting a lot of convenings as well. So we've hosted a convene on an infrastructure summit back in November, just 2 weeks after the legislation was signed into law. We recently hosted a broadband digital equity and workforce innovation summit. And coming up, we have an electric vehicle and alternative fuel vehicle summit being held in South Carolina. So we're very excited about that and be able to sort of drill down into some of the spaces in the Infrastructure Act. But anyway, I'll leave it there, but if anyone has any questions, very happy to try and answer those or take those on notice.
Thank you, Glenn. Secretary Keogh did have to step out, so I'll just open it up to see if we have any questions from any of our members here in the room first, or any of our members participating via Zoom. Well, Glenn, I guess I got one question, but first I just want to thank you for the work that NGA does. As someone who's attended a few of those, they're very informative, and it's a whole lot we're all still trying to kind of wrap our heads around. But and not to throw you under the bus here by any means, but have you had any discussions about how the new Inflation Reduction Act, because we're already starting to see some notices of fundings and things like that out of that bill already, as last night I think we received some emails and requests for information. So have y'all talked about, can you kind of do a same thing, or do you plan on doing a similar thing, or have you even had a chance to have those discussions yet?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we had a very brief discussion about that earlier today. So our Office of Government Relations has done a fantastic sort of summary of the Act, and it's very clear there's a lot of overlap with some of the IIJA programs, or they actually involve extensions of the programs, from what I understand. Say, for example, the Reconnecting Communities program is getting the boost through the Inflation Reduction Act. So how we address that and how we tackle that on our webpage is something we still need to work out, but it's definitely going to be there in some shape or form, and linked to the Infrastructure Investment and Job Act programs as well, given there's so much overlap. But that's a great question and definitely top of mind, and definitely keen to sort of drill down into all those programs as well. So.
All right, thank you. And on the state side too, I know we're starting to look at that because, prior to IIJA, as you know, Governor Hutchinson, as chair of NGA, was one of the first ones to create a committee like this. And since then, the very first NGA meeting I went to, I think there were about, I don't know, a third or so of the total numbers that are coming now. So more and more governors are appointing either infrastructure coordinators, existing cabinet members, or creating new positions. So I guess we'll kind of have to wait and see how that plays out. But we do thank you for your time today and appreciate you being able to join us.
No, well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate the opportunity. And please reach out if anyone has any other questions. We're ready to help. And, if you see anything there that we're missing, let us know as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll move to our next item on the agenda, funding opportunities for zero and low emission school and transit buses. And I believe, Bailey, I'm supposed to turn it over to you to introduce Tricia.
Yes, we have Tricia Treese. She is the Deputy Associate Director for our Office of Air Quality. So she's really involved with the low emission buses, but she's also a very important member of our internal IPAC committee.
So from running the computer program and saving the day a few minutes ago now to giving your own presentation and taking notes all at the same time.
I wear whatever hats I need to. All right, so stepping aside from helping support IPAC, I'm really here to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's basically investments we can make that support school districts and public transportation, and also reduce emissions, improve air quality in our state. So I'm going to go over 3 opportunities. Next slide. Okay, so Clean School Bus. This is an EPA program that was funded under IJEC. It's brand new. It is about to end in 3 days. at least for the first year of applications. And so they structured this as a rebate program. Basically, you have a old diesel bus, school bus, that you replace with a new school bus. EPA pays a rebate for the cost of the new school bus and you destroy the old one. So you take a higher emitting school bus off the road and put a new clean one in its place that has much lower emissions. So similar program, the Low No program for Federal Transit Agency. Yeah. And then I also am really happy to talk about our ABC program, which was, we released earlier this summer. We've reopened it after restructuring it to be more similar to the Clean School Bus program and to offer a rebate. Next slide. Okay, so what do we mean by a zero or low emissions bus? So generally speaking, when EPA is talking about this or FTA is talking about this or we're talking about it, what we're talking about is something that is alternative to the standard gasoline and diesel fuels that historically buses have been operating on. So we're talking about battery electric, compressed natural gas, propane. Depending on the program, sometimes that low emissions bus definition can vary. So our program, ABC, is also including liquefied natural gas and hybrids. EPA's program doesn't include those, but it does include the big battery electric and natural gas and propane. So these buses are capable of reducing emissions. So we don't have diesel exhaust coming out anymore. We have lower NOx emissions and lower emissions of the various pollutants that can cause air quality and health risks. And so there are benefits beyond just the emission reduction. So we're very happy about the air quality benefits, but these alternative fuels are to use domestically produced fuels. So, we produce natural gas here in Arkansas. So you can use an Arkansas fuel for that. We're producing our own power. And in addition to this, a lot of these vehicles have much lower maintenance costs and fuel costs when you compare them to traditional gasoline and diesel vehicles. For example, you don't have to worry about a transmission on an electric vehicle. And so that's another benefit there. Next slide. So just to highlight these, and we can make these slides available. EPA's Clean School Bus program offers $500 million a year in rebates. So remember I said that their application period is closing in 3 days. It'll open up again next year. So it opened in May of this year. So maybe look for applications to open back up again May of next year. And so those have half of that reserved for zero emission school buses, so primarily battery electric, and the other 50% can be either battery electric or any of those alternative fuels that I mentioned. So in Arkansas, state and local governments who are responsible for bus service or purchasing buses for school districts, the contractors that are actually selling those buses to those school districts, as well as nonprofit school transportation associations. One thing that's, I think, really key to mention here is that EPA has structured this Clean School Bus program to have different levels of rebates, depending on whether or not you qualify as a priority school district. And those are based on underserved and low income criteria in rural school districts. And so just to note, there are 193 school districts in Arkansas that meet at least one of those criteria to get the higher funding level. Deadline for applications is closing soon. Another thing to think about this program is that it's done by lottery. So as long as you submit an application and it's eligible, you enter into that lottery. You're not necessarily judged on a competitive basis, but if you are a priority applicant, then you get higher funding. Next slide. So the Low-No program, this is done by the FTA. They're going to have $1.1 billion a year over the next 5 years. These are competitive grants. And so designated recipients of FTA grants, so if you've received an FTA grant in the past, state and local government authorities are eligible. Just to note that this is an existing program that received a 71% bump under IJA. in terms of the funding that's available. So this can be used for purchasing or leasing these buses. And they can also be used for related support facilities and workforce development. So this one already closed, but look for it spring 2023 for the next round. Next slide. Okay, and so the ABC program is our program. We actually just reopened it yesterday after restructuring it to be a rebate program instead of a cost share requirement program. And so we have 7.6 million to award in rebates. So we're accepting applications. This is another one of those, if you have an eligible diesel bus to replace, you can apply to us. We'll select competitively the applicants, and then the project will be complete, and then we reimburse you for the eligible expenses up to the amount of the rebate. So this has several goals for our state. One, we want to incentivize next generation vehicle technologies. Again, I mentioned there are a lot of benefits to these, including the emission reductions, but also some of those domestic fuel supply issues. Investing in Arkansas communities. So these diesel buses, are traveling around the state in and around the communities. Children are riding on them and children's lungs are developing. So it's most important, or it's very important to reduce exposure to pollutants such as diesel exhaust. And same thing with transit, those are going in and around where people live. And so these emission reductions actually benefit the communities that they're located in, and they have a big impact. So we project that it would reduce about 2,481 tons of air pollutant emissions based on kind of our projections of how many projects we could fund. Next slide. So just a little bit more. So the only eligible entities for this are school districts and transit authorities. The applicant must be a government agency, and that definition of what we mean by government agency is in our applicant guidance, but it's basically established under the Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust Settlement, because that's where the funding for this program came from. They have to have been in Arkansas for at least 3 years, and they have to own the equipment that's going to be replaced. So those older diesel vehicles that are going to be scrapped as part of this project, the applicant needs to be the owner of those. Next slide. So what we're looking for in terms of buses that are eligible to replace, we're looking for things with engine model year 2009 or earlier, and class 4 through 8 diesel, either school or transit buses. They have to be operational, so we don't need, something that's already been destroyed or doesn't work. We're trying to take emissions off the road, so it has to be something that's out moving around, accumulating miles, so that when we replace that, we're making an emission reduction in the community. And then the bus also needs to be something that the applicant wasn't planning on replacing in the next 3 years. That way we're getting, those emission reductions that this program targets. Next slide.
So 7,000 miles per year during 2020, schools replaced, there could be an issue.
Can you go back to the previous slide? So that's why we inserted, and this is a little bit truncated here for being on a slide, but they have to have operated at least 3 days a week, even if they didn't get the 7,000 miles, except for periods during which they were shut down because of COVID. So we do have something in our applicant guide that specifically addresses that issue. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to select projects on a competitive basis. So we're looking at how cost effective is this project, what are the benefits to the community, that sort of thing. As I mentioned before, compressed natural gas, liquefied natural gas, propane, gasoline or diesel hybrids, and all electric drivetrains are eligible. We have different rebate levels depending on whether it's a school bus or a transit bus, and whether it's alternative fuel or low emissions fuel or no emissions fuel like the all electric. Next slide. Oh, one thing I did want to mention, for electric only, one depot charger per bus replaced can be included in the eligible costs. We are allowed to do that under the Volkswagen settlement. We're not allowed to pay for infrastructure for any of the low emission fuels. All right, so just timeline, we're accepting applications until October 31st. Our application form and applicant guidance are live on our webpage. We'll be selecting projects this fall after the application period closes. We estimate that projects could take, we used to estimate 6 months for project completion, but with the supply chain being as crazy as it is, we're providing some additional time for project completion there. And then after the project's completed, so we have the new buses in stock, we've destroyed the old buses, and submitted all of our demonstrations that we've done the project according to our agreement, then we issue a rebate. So it's very important. This is not to purchase the bus before you're selected, as an applicant. We'll have a memorandum of agreement that we enter into with the selected applicants. And so it's important not to make any purchases towards the project before that memorandum of agreement is signed. Next slide. So this is my contact info. I have a couple of very excellent staff members who are running this program, but I'm also happy to take any questions you guys may have.
All right, thank you, Tricia. Do we have any questions for Tricia? Anyone on Zoom have a question?
Yeah, I've got a question. So just in terms of like the outreach that you're doing to districts, and when did the application process open? How many have you received to date? I mean, are y'all receiving that at this point in time? And then, I mean, are they, school districts specifically, are they aware that this program is out there, and what efforts have been done to make them aware of it?
So we issued a press release yesterday, and then one of my staff members has sent emails in batches of 10 to 15 to 962 school contacts. I think she compiled her list, including superintendents, transportation managers, and grants managers at the various schools. We've also reached out to the transit authorities. However, if you have other suggestions for folks we can try to spread the word to, I'm very happy to do that.
What's like the cost of one of these low emission buses? Just curious. I was looking at the rebate totals. I'm just curious what the cost of one is.
Can you go back to a couple of slides? Okay, so the 98,000 for alternative fuel school bus is just about enough to fully pay for a propane school bus. CNG are a little bit more expensive. I haven't really seen a lot of data on LNG. And then the 375,000 for an all electric school bus should be, based on some NREL studies, enough to cover the cost of a electric school bus and the depot charger. Same thing with the transit buses.
So it looks like, I'm just really curious, right? So it seems like a fleet school bus program, right? It's kind of mirrored after that.
Yes.
So of those 193 districts that were, I thought would be like 75% of all the different districts in Arkansas, my math's right, they could have had some significant, efforts from that program. Is there any idea how many districts or anybody in Arkansas applied for that program?
I don't know how many applied for that program. We did hear a lot about how they had done their program over the summer when schools aren't in session, and heard some issues about that. And so that kind of affected our timing for rolling this out. I didn't include the clean school bus rebate amounts on there, but ours for the all electric matched their priority district rebate amounts. And then our alternative fuel rebate amounts are more generous.
Any further questions? Thank you. All right, just a few house cleaning items, I guess, that Secretary Keo asked me to go over in terms of next steps. Then I'll open it up in case anybody has anything before we adjourn. But we are working on, and Donnelly, I saw just left, but we're working on updating the Infrastructure Planning Advisory Committee webpage. We do have a link. I believe right now the executive order is on there, the names of you all as members of the committee, and we are working to populate that where that can be a place where we put minutes from these meetings. We can also put those weekly reports that we're sending out that you're receiving as committee members so that the public can see it, counties, cities, everybody else will be able to see it as well. And then one of the other items that we're going to probably put on there is a summary of the White House calls, the monthly White House calls that they're doing on the Infrastructure Act. So if there are other items that you all as committee members would like to see on there, I'll ask Donald about the link over the next few days so you can start looking at it and maybe getting an idea of what else you all as committee members think we should put on that webpage. We definitely want to get that out there and get that information out to the public in an efficient manner and a quick manner. So we're working on that. Also, it looks like we're probably going to have an October meeting. To be honest, we're probably going to look at a different location so that we maybe, I know we're in the process at some point of having to upgrade sound and technology in this room. So if there's a place that you all would like to suggest that has already been updated, maybe that'll make it a little easier for our next meeting. So we're going to look for an October meeting. We will be looking for another place. If you happen to have one, let us know. We would love to come visit. And I think that's mostly what I have in terms of next steps. But before we adjourn, does anyone have anything they want to bring up? One other item I'll bring up from our department experience, and the Administrator Bingle can probably talk more to it, but we're learning a lot about how the Deloitte contract methodology actually works as we're starting to receive some of this. So we all kind of knew that we were going to have a peer review or legislative review before we actually spend the money. We're also now in the process of learning as we're entering into our first two contracts with Deloitte to administer programs or to do work, that if your contract, even though it's under the master service agreement, if your scope of work with Deloitte is going to be in excess of $50,000, you're also going to still need legislative ALC review. So as you're starting to look at implementing these programs, you might need to build in additional time to make sure you get all the legislative committee reviews that you're going to need. And some of these, we just don't know exactly how it's going to work yet, but we're learning. And obviously governor's office review along.
Yeah, I just found that one out this morning, but that same contract that we will go to ALC for, you need a governor's office review prior to the ALC review. And then if the money you're getting from IWJA as part of that contract, then you have to go back again to get appropriation for the funds you just paid the consultant for to apply for you. So it's a long-term process to go from the beginning to the end of that process.
And having a consultant on call with a master service agreement obviously expedites a lot of it because we don't have to go out and do a competitive bid for every project, but there are still, it's not just you select them and you're done. There's still quite a bit of review that we're going to have to do and learn through this process. So, anybody else have anything they want to add? Anyone on Zoom have anything to say? Guess we're adjourned. Thank you.